All right. So yeah, let's get started. I didn't. I have there's a lightning talk space, by the way. I forgot to mention that. I know we create threads. I know maybe Jeff, I can ask you to create a thread for each talk there for so that we can get. I forgot to do that. Sorry about that. So we'll start talking about developer productivity. As you can see, this is kind of going off an article I wrote for the Solution Street newsletter for the March version. Um, I'm mostly interested in this because, again, I've been thinking about this throughout my career. I think my first manager asked me to give us estimates based on the lines of code that we wrote. And I always had trouble figuring out how to measure that. Anyway, but the point about developer productivity is, when you try to measure that, you get what to measure, right? So if you try to count commits, you might end up with, a lot of trivial commits. Developers trying to sort of, make sure they commit a lot, maybe small, pointless commits. Maybe, I've seen, just like there are, mouse shakers to make sure that you're inactive for when you're working remotely. There are bots that will make a commit to your repo every day, so your GitHub commit streak looks pretty good. If you're measuring for code review speed, for example, the downside for that could be, you end up with technical debt because you're not getting a good review, good enough review, or bugs are getting through and so on. So the idea is that to be mindful about what we are measuring. So one of the first things I read about was given with the proliferation of like DevOps based workflows, there was a group at Google that they came up with a program called DevOps Research and Assessment, and that with that they sort of had a few metrics that they recommended that each team should measure, right? So those are like deployment frequency, how quickly, how often you are successfully releasing, lead time for changes, like amount of time it takes for a commit to get into production, change failure rate, how many times a deployment leads to a failure, and a time to restore service, which is how long it takes to recover from a failure, right? So these are all kind of measures. They're very obviously very focused to the DevOps based workflows. And if you're, for example, deploying often, your changes are getting into production quickly, and you have a very low change failure rate or a quick time to restore service, that might suggest that you are a very mature organization. But obviously, these things are only focused on from the time when a commit is made, and then forward from there, right? So building on top of Dora, the next program that I want to talk to you about is based on the next set of metrics are called space metrics. This was basically came up with with some researchers at Microsoft and GitHub came up with this. So these are basically a set of metrics. They sort of use the space as an acronym for that. The first one is measuring satisfaction and well-being, like how fulfilled developers feel with their work and how good they're feeling about what they're doing. Performance is the outcome of a system or a process. Activity is count of actions, commit frequency, code review frequency is an example of that. Communication and collaboration, I think this is something that doesn't really, we don't think about this as affecting measurement developer productivity, but obviously this is very important. I'm seeing it firsthand in some of the projects that I have worked on, like having a set norms for communicating changes, and better collaboration between teams does lead to better outcomes. And also efficiency and flow, right? The ability to complete work without distractions, being mindful about how many meetings you are setting up and so on, right? I think these are the kind of things can affect developer productivity as well. Uh, so given all that, one of the things that, with these measurements, obviously, none of these, some of these measurements can obviously be operationalized, can be automated. In other cases, you may have to sort of set up things in place where you are basically setting up workflows where you're asking people for their feedback, maybe a daily checkpoint, things like that. To that end, I did see one of the references to on the article that I wrote was about the Good Day project. That was an experiment which was run at GitHub, which which and laid out pretty well about how to kind of measure, collect information about things that are not easily operationalize, right? Um, so so one of the things that has, that after all of this led to has been a focus on developer experience. And a developer experience is not just about how, happy or satisfied an individual developer is. It's not just about providing good equipment, although that is a given. Obviously, we need to have good equipment to be able to, a big screen and a nice keyboard obviously goes a long way in making sure we can be productive. But also, this is also about, you know, just setting up your team in a way that you are focusing on developer experience. And this improvements made to the developer experience are obviously directly affect how good an individual does, but they also roll up to the team at the organization level, right? So the team, you can have improved code quality, lower technical debt, and finally for the organization, you may be able to sort of actually do a good job of achieving your goals, right? So that's about that. Finally, what can we do as consultants? One of the things that I've seen that has worked, on my most recent project, and then moving on from there, there's always areas for improvement. Whenever somebody joins a new project, that's kind of the honeymoon phase. Usually some projects allow you some time to ramp up. So whenever you see any gaps in onboarding documents, you can update those, or you can create them if there aren't any. I know I'm working with Bart on one of the projects, and there was nothing, right? And he kind of created the documentation, and I was able to use that and get started pretty quickly. Bring in ideas from your past projects and experiences whenever you can. One of the things that obviously as consultants, we are focused on solving problems for our customers, but we can also help, development teams at our customer side kind of see the additional value we bring, by doing all that. So yeah, that's all for my talk. Thanks everybody for listening to me for the last, I'm not sure how long I went for, but it's probably been around 5 minutes. And yeah, subscribe to our newsletter. You can get it via email or via LinkedIn or both. It's, you get to read articles such as this and others that we have written. And also, there's also, great links that we put together to, with good insights related to software development and related activities. Thanks, everybody. And with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Ryan, you're up next.
Okay, sounds great. Let me go ahead and share here. Okay, can everyone see? What do you guys see?
You see the card dealing robot?
You see this here, Crunch Labs Hackpack? You see that? Okay, perfect. All right, sounds good. So for my lightning talk, what I would like to talk about is Crunch Labs Hackpack. So just a little bit of background on this. I have a strong interest in robotics. When I was in grad school, I worked in a robotics lab. I also was a TA for robotics and a mentor for a FIRST robotics competition team. I have 4 kids. 2 of my kids have been on robotics teams. So this is something that's like right in my wheelhouse of things that I'm interested in. Hopefully, if you're interested in this as well, or if you have kids that might be STEM oriented, I'd strongly recommend checking this out. Right. So these are robotics projects for teens and for adults. The first place to start on this is this guy. So do you know who he is? If you don't, just ask your teenager, because this is Mark Rober. He has done many, many, many wildly popular YouTube videos about science and technology. And what he's done is he's parlayed his success there into a company called Crunch Labs. Now, Crunch Labs, what that is it's a STEM subscription box. He actually has 2 different flavors of it. One is for, one's called the Build Box, another is called Hackpack. Hackpack is relatively new. I was with my son at the FIRST Robotic Competitions Worlds in Houston last year, and Mark was actually there introducing Hackpack as a new concept. So it's relatively new. We're actually on the 7th box, which is this one here. As you can see in the little image here, this is my daughter's closet. My daughter is 15. In her closet, she's got multiple shelves of just stuff from Mark Rober, which I personally think is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is let me jump to this just so you can see my video. This is the Hackback. It's about a shoebox, maybe a thin shoebox size box. When you open it up, it has instructions that look like this. So there's an instructions manual. Inside the instructions manual, it talks about the actual, the robot itself, the electronics components. I mean, it's probably 30, 40 pages long. Very well done set of instructions to walk through this, right? When I mentioned that my daughter has all this stuff, she gets this every month. She does it start to finish all by herself, right? I'm not involved other than, hey, Dad, check out this cool thing I built, which usually involves me getting shot with a Nerf gun, right? So in the box is all this, plus the components themselves. What I'm going to show here is this is the completed robot, right? So I did not disassemble it just for this presentation, but this is the completed one. What I'm going to do now is, let me go back to this, and I'm going to give a little bit of a, this is what it looks like, right? You guys can see this okay? All right. So I'll do a little voiceover as we go. So I'm turning it on. I may have hacked the startup sequence slightly. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah. So what this is a card dealing robot. And what you do is you first indicate where the little where the players are, and then you choose which game you want it to deal for. And here I've got it dealing for blackjack. Right. So it's going to spin around, it's going to deal for blackjack. And then the way the code is set up is for blackjack, it will then ask a subsequent question, which is, do you want to hit or do you want to stay? Right. So that's where we're at right now, which is you press the blue button that if you want to hit, or green if you want to stand. Right. Preloaded, this comes with, I think it deals out for, I don't know, 6 different games or so. I'll jump over here to the IDE, right? So here are all the different robots. This is just, if you're familiar with Arduino, I know personally I've built probably 1 or 2 dozen Arduino projects over the past 10, 12 years. This is just C code, right? It's not like, don't get worked up about this, right? This is pretty straightforward. But for example, the little hack that I did here, I just said, to get it to display solution street, I just did this, right? So display something, give it a little bit of delay, display, delay, delay, display, delay. Yeah, so that is it. Again, strongly recommend, strong recommendation on this. These are super fun. Actually, I wish I was more involved in building them with my daughter. I mean, I love that she can just go and do it by herself and that she shows me what the results are. But yeah, again, highly recommended, good stuff. I think, Mark has done some fantastic work in terms of his videos, but what he's put together here in terms of STEM education and having an impact on teenagers, I think is phenomenal. So that's my lightning talk. Prashant, back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. That was great.
Yep.
That was really
Yeah,
cool.
you got it.
All right. Okay, next up is Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this works and everybody can see my screen. Say nothing if you can see my screen. Okay, great. Regular Expressions 101, as mentioned by one significant developer, as an exhilarating experience. So we're excited to bring this to you. Got to go quick here. What are regular expressions? Okay, regular expressions are regex, or some people pronounce it regex. They're just patterns that are used to match character combinations. So think of a sort of beefier search and replace. Regular expressions are supported by pretty much all modern programming languages, but the syntax varies. So you'll want to check your own language that you're used to using of how you make matches and deal with finding and replacing text in the particular language for that syntax. And regular expressions are very powerful, but they have some pretty confusing syntax that we'll get into. But once you have a good handle on how they work, it can be a really powerful tool in your tool belt. So what things can you do with regular expressions? Some things you can validate input, validate email addresses, phone numbers, zip codes, any kind of text that you want to validate in the input that you get from a website or from any kind of user input. You can use a regular expression to validate that input. You can search and extract data from logs or files. For example, you could find all the error messages in a log and extract that content for someone to review. And you can quickly clean and transform data. This is something that I use a fair amount of time. Search and replace complex JSON data with ease with regular expressions. My opinion, they're vital, and in my, from my perspective, an expected tool in any developer's toolbox. So I would think that with any customer that we have, with any project we're working on, that our developers should have a fairly basic, at least, knowledge in regular expressions. And even if you're not a developer, they can be useful in manipulating data that you might use for tests or any other JSON or like data that you work with. Let's go over some basic syntax. So when you think of regular expression, think of these things down the left-hand side as the characters you can use when building up a regular expression. And I'll go over each of these pretty quickly, but I'll make my presentation available to everyone at the end if they want to go back through it. So a single dot just matches any character. So if I had an example here of a capital J, a lowercase o, and then 2 dots, it's going to match all those things on the right because they all start with uppercase J and a lowercase o, and then 2 more characters. If you use a caret, you're basically saying, hey, I want to begin my string with this. So a caret with an if would match the if in if I were a rich man. Similarly, a $sign you'd match at the end, starting to the end of a string. So the boy with a $sign here will only match that last boy. It just kind of works backwards. You use square brackets to do character sets. So anything you put within the square brackets will match. So a 0 with a dash and a 9 means any digits, 0 through 9. You can see what matches there. A pipe is used for an or. So if you had ice with a lowercase I or ice with an uppercase I, you'd match on both of those things, but you would not match on the all uppercase ICE. A plus following a character means one or more of that character. So ME with a plus means an M followed by one or more E's. So you can see that the meet and the me in the middle, what gets matched there. Similarly, an asterisk is 0 or more. So now you see that there's the me in meet, there's the me in me, and then also the M in middle will match because an M followed by 0 or more E's, that matches on the middle. Similarly, with a question mark, it matches on 0 or 1 of the preceding character. So again, same example, you get the me's and the M at the end. And then if you want to do the exact number of times, you can use the squiggly braces, and the 3 E's there are matched just in the M-E-E-E. Continuing, you also have these things called character classes. Character classes is the shortcut to various things that will get used over and over again. So \W will match any word character. And now that we know that the square brackets you can add to different characters, you can see that generally \W is going to be A to Z, inclusive of capital and lowercase letters, any digit, and an underscore character. So it kind of matches almost everything in that let's meet at the online party sentence. Similarly, the digit character class will match any 0 through 9 digits. So again, I'm saying I want to get one or more digits there. And so both the 3 and the 99 match. There's a \S, which is a space character. So that'll match any kind of white space, a tab, a new line character. And that \W star, so 0 or more word characters, plus a space, plus the word yours will match the is yours in the world is yours. You can use a caret within a square brackets to negate the actual character set. So by negating all those vowels, I'll match on every consonant. So we build up all these different characters we can do, and we can make some pretty complex and interesting strings. So let's talk about something called capture groups. With capture groups, what those do is you put those in regular old parentheses and they save off matches for extraction or replacement. They're indexed from 1 going up, and the 0th group is the full match. So let's do an example to make it clear. So the regular expression I've created is, and regular expressions, usually when you identify them, you start them with this / and you end them with the / with anything at the end being toggles or switches. In this case, a G means global. So I want to find the word Tito, and then I want to capture a \W, so that's a word character or a space. Interesting here, I put a space 1 or more times. So anything that starts with Tito and has word characters or a space 1 or more times. So now I have some text. Tito is a great developer. Tito is a wonderful human being. Both of these match the entire regular expression, but the blue area is what gets captured. So if I then want to replace it, my replacement string is Stephen $1. This is called the back reference. It references the first capture group. There's only one real capture group here. So when I replace this entire string with this string, it takes Stephen and it adds the capture group data. Is a great developer, is a wonderful human being. Okay, that's just an example of capture groups, how you might use them. So let's talk about some tools. Your editor is going to have built-in support pretty much regardless of any editor you use. You just got to figure out how to turn it on. I have a screenshot here of Visual Studio Code. You can see in my example here, here's the regular expression search toggle. You turn that on, and now you can put regular expressions here. Here I'm trying to take some JSON, and I've got a customer ID attribute where the customer IDs are all with a capital C followed by a bunch of digits. And what I want to do is I want to replace anything I see there with a new scheme for my customer ID with cust instead of C. So my replacement is just customer ID and then cust with my back reference. Here's the capture group, that's /D with a plus. And so VS Code is nice. It gives you a little preview of your search and replace results. So it's replacing this C001, cust 001. This is better than just looking for everything that starts with C and has some numbers after it. That might be in some other attribute that's not even the customer ID. So this helps to really focus in on what you want to search and replace. In addition, your database is going to have built-in support. For example, in Postgres, it uses the tilde for case-sensitive regular expression matches, the tilde asterisk for case-insensitive, and uses a not modifier. This example here will go to the customer database. It'll find any zip codes that don't match this string where I start, and the caret at the beginning says start with this, the $ at the end means ends with this, and I have 5 digits, so it'll find all the customers that don't have US formatted zip codes, at least with 5 digits. So that's your database will help you with regular expressions also. My personal favorite for testing and figuring out what regular expressions to use is called regexer. This is just a sort of screenshot of what it looks like. It's got some helpful references and cheat sheets over here on the left. It's got a nice color-coded expression area. You can put in whatever sample text you want. So this was the example I used before, and it shows the full matches. And then at the bottom, you can actually do several things like explain, where it'll actually break down the regular expression into what it's matching. And you can even have some replacement text with your back reference and see the results. So this is basically what I had done on a couple of slides ago. Okay. So final thoughts. Here's an email address, regular expression I grabbed. Here's a website URL, regular expression I grabbed. There are going to be things in here you're not going to understand from what I just told you. Things like the \B at the beginning and end, or the $:colon here. But generally, hopefully, now that we've looked at this, this looks less like Greek and more like what you could kind of try to work your way through in understanding what it's doing. That was the goal. The goal was to give you a brief introduction. Of course, with anything now in coding, AI can make things much easier. You can just ask it for a regular expression to solve a problem. But you know, our typical disclaimers apply. Make sure you understand what it's giving you back. Don't blindly use anything. Test it and sort of don't trust. You really want to test what you're getting from any kind of coding assistant or AI tool. Regexes are very testable. In other words, you can quickly write and whip up a ton of unit tests for regular expressions that you write, and you really should. And here, AI can help with this too. Here's my regular expression. Can you give me 50 things that will actually test it? Some that pass, some that fail, some that match, some that don't match. Once you're comfortable, it's a very valuable tool, and you'll find yourself using it and finding uses for it on a day-to-day basis. That's my quick talk about regular expressions. Happy to talk more with anybody that wants to know more. It's one of my favorite things in development is using regular expressions. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Let me stop sharing if I can figure out where to do that. There it is. Okay, there it is. Sorry.
No problem. All right, Stephen, you can bring us home with your talk.
Great. Okay, let me just start this. Okay, everyone can see my screen, right? Okay, cool. All right, yeah, so last month I went to Japan, used up a lot of PTO. And today I'm just gonna talk about sort of what I did there, kind of tips. If you guys are planning on going to Japan, some things I learned, stuff like that. So go ahead and get started. Yeah, so obviously you got to get there. I used Skyscanner, which if you guys haven't heard, it's pretty popular nowadays, but that's like, you know, uh, basically searching for all the best deals for flights based on criteria you put in. I think we paid like 900 per ticket, round trip. I think the lowest we saw was 700 when we were looking, but we went like peak Japan cherry blossom season, so that's kind of expected. But yeah, we flew Delta, pretty comfortable. I haven't really flown much, but I'm a pretty big guy, I guess, and I wasn't like super uncomfortable in my seat. So cool thing about Delta is they give out these little trading cards if you go up to the pilot. So yeah, 757 from Baltimore to Atlanta and an Airbus 350, which was the big plane from Atlanta to Haneda Airport. And total flight time was like 16 hours, and then we had some delays and stuff, so it was pretty much a whole day of traveling and driving. So, but once you're there, you typically forget about all that stuff. But yeah, this is kind of like our heat map. Landed in Haneda, which is very close to Tokyo. Stayed in Tokyo for a few days. And then we kind of started our journey, going further down the coastline and then down to Kyoto and Osaka. Stayed there a few days respectively. Kept going down, stopped at Himeji, which is really nice. There's a really nice castle there. Went down to Kurashiki, which is like the denim capital of Japan. That's where a lot of the first denim factories were established. So picked up a couple pieces there. And then we went from Kurashiki all the way back to Tokyo. And then the last few days were spent there. So we did a lot of traveling, but the idea was to experience all the different cultures and areas that we could while we were there. So yeah, and all the traveling, this is kind of we use Google Maps the entire time. Could not recommend this more. I wouldn't use Apple Maps. It actually had a lot of issues with the trains. But yeah, Google Maps was excellent for all that stuff. We never got lost. The trains can be pretty packed, so especially the very popular lines. This is a common experience for us. There's like videos of people getting smushed into trains. We saw that probably 5 times. Yeah. Anyway, can be kind of crazy, but Japan's infrastructure is very like advanced. So we use this Suica card in our Apple wallets, and all you have to do is just scan it when you enter in a subway station, and then whenever you leave, you scan it again, and it takes out whatever that trip cost. Super cool. And then I put some apps here, or Yamato Transport is a luggage forwarding service that we used. So we didn't have to bring our like luggage and backpacks on the train everywhere. We could just send it to an address and it ends up there in a few days. So super cool. Uh, in terms of where we stayed, we tried to stay in a lot of different places. So the first one here is a traditional Japanese house that we stayed in. The second one here is a apartment that's a Japanese, like traditional Japanese house. And this third one here is a hostel, so it's like communal living. So that was an experience, you know, it wasn't as great as the first two, obviously, but it was cheap. And then this last one here, they're called pod hotels. They're pretty popular in Japan. You basically just get a pod and a locker, and that's where you sleep. Kind of cool. Wasn't as comfortable, obviously, but yeah, and we pretty much use booking.com for the entirety of our accommodation bookings. Couldn't recommend that enough. That's what people from my research were saying to use, and it worked out great. So happy about that. In terms of like language, I would not recommend using Duolingo. I spent like 2 months on it, learned like maybe 100 words, and that's about it. I couldn't really speak in any like complete sentences really. And honestly, as long as you know arigato gozaimasu and sumimasen, that's all you need. Arigato gozaimasu just means thank you, and sumimasen means like excuse me or I'm sorry. That's pretty much all you need. Most of the signs there have like English, so you can see this is an example. This is a train sign. All these lines are in English. You know, they have good color coding, symbols, stuff like that. And when we like couldn't, use these two to get what we need, we used DeepL, which is an app that translates. You can take pictures, speak into it and translate. And then a lot of vendors have these pocket translators too, which were super helpful. Same sort of deal, you talk into it and it speaks English back to you. So, and then quickly, I'm just going to go through some apps that we used. So Wanderlog is something we use to plan all of our activities and our itinerary. Super helpful. It's free. Has some AI assistant help too, which is cool. Klook is a good app to use if you want to like, find stuff to do around Japan, Osaka, stuff like that. Zeikai Japan is just a website for like photographers if you want to find a really nice like view or something. Zeikai just means nice view in Japanese. Tablog is like a restaurant review app for locals. So it's not like Google reviews where like foreigners rate things. This is like a official like what the locals think is good. So we found some restaurants in here. Peikey, you can scan a barcode on a product and it translates everything for you in English. Super helpful at convenience stores and stuff. I use this app for my eSIM. Really super easy to use. And then for like, if you want to use Wi-Fi everywhere, this is a cool app. I didn't really use this, so I kind of used a lot of data. I forgot to download this, but this is like, you automatically connect to Wi-Fi networks that are subscribed to this like public service essentially. This is a good website if you want to look at, when you go to Mount Fuji, this tells you like visibility and stuff like that. And then this is like the most used thing I ever used. In your calculator, you can actually turn this little toggle on and you can convert from yen to USD very, very easily. So that's what I use mostly. And then last thing here, just some things to know if you are planning a trip. They do not have drying machines. So you'll either have to hang dry your stuff or use a fan. So that was something we weren't expecting, but it's pretty common there. They actually don't have any public trash cans. So what we did was we had like a plastic bag that we would carry around. They don't have any public trash cans because there was like a terrorist attack where people put bombs in trash cans. So they removed all of them and never put them back. So that's just part of their culture there now. You'll want to have a shoulder bag or buy one when you get there, because if you are buying a lot of stuff there, you can actually get like tax-free shopping if you show your passport. So it's like saves you 10%. They have really small portion sizes, so expect to get 2 meals if you're like me. You'll want to, yeah, you'll want to get good walking shoes. We walked about 30,000 steps a day, which was more than anything I've done in my life. So cash and coins are king there. So if you have like a coin purse or something like that, I just put it in my fanny pack. You want to make sure you get cash. A lot of vendors for food don't really accept card. And then, yeah, their convenience stores are amazing there. You wouldn't believe the 7-Eleven. Like, we went to a convenience store probably twice a day there. They're amazing. Open all the time, has really good food. Yeah. And if you are planning a trip or just interested in my trip overall, please reach out. I'm happy to talk. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Stephen, for that. Yeah, I think I'll probably be reaching out to you at some point. I guess just across, across the, we'll use that small hole that you drill between our offices.
Sounds good.
Right. So yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for the presenters for presenting, Ryan, Jeff, and Stephen, and thanks everybody for listening along. There are links and stuff in the notes. You can continue the discussion in the Google space, and yeah, also do sign up. If you have any ideas about anything that you'd like to talk about. Obviously, you can see the topics can run the gamut. There's no you can it can be technical or anything fun that you want to share about. That's fine too. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you.